Defense attorneys in the Karen Read murder retrial are scrutinizing testimony from a crash reconstruction expert. Dr. Judson Welcher is facing questions about his analysis of the murder scene. Read is accused of hitting her then boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, with her car and leaving him to die in a snowstorm in 2022. She pled not guilty to second-degree murder, among other charges. And earlier, the defense honed in on 3D models used to detail the crash scene.
I get to ask the questions, and you are to answer them subject to the judge's ruling. So my question is, couldn't you have created a graphic that would have better shown the issue that you are creating or talking about today? That's my question. Couldn't you have created a graphic?
We did. We created a whole bunch of graphics.
You called what we just saw a graphic?
Yes.
Well, if there's a gap, why isn't there then something that shows a clear gap?
Because when you have the angulation of the vehicles, you have perspective. When you're looking at it, even if you do a top down, you see everything projected onto a single flat plane. So you can't tell the height of things. So when you see things in this dimension, you can't necessarily see depth of things. So you lose in two-dimensional images, you lose one dimension depending on which way you're looking. That's why I showed it from all these different angles.
All right, for more, I want to bring in ABC News Live anchor Phil Lipof and a civil trial attorney, Tre Lovell. And Phil, I was listening to that soundbite.
Could you figure it out?
I get to ask the questions.
That's right.
I get to ask the questions, and couldn't you have done better?
Right.
What is the defense really trying to get at here?
Exactly that. They want there to be some contention there. They want to show that they maybe know better than the expert, that they are looking at the expert's testimony and saying, why didn't you do this? Sure, you can show us that graphic, but why didn't you show us this graphic? Mm-hmm. Why didn't you do this? And that's been their MO throughout the whole trial, because there is no smoking gun here. There is no video of what happened to John O'Keefe on the night of January 29th, 2022. There just isn't. So it's a battle of the experts. This is the key expert for the prosecution. He was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this reconstruction, and he backs up what the prosecution says, that John O'Keefe was hit by Karen Read's car. There's no proof of that outside of what he's saying.
Well, and Tre, I mean, what do you make of this approach by Karen Read's defense team?
You know, it's challenging. But what they're doing is they're throwing out the question, shouldn't you have done a different graphic? Not as concerned about what he's going to say, but to gear up their experts. Because their experts are going to come on board and say, hey, he made a mistake. This doesn't accurately depict what happened. It could have been more clear. This is where he made mistakes. So a lot of these questions, even though you want to get favorable responses from the expert, you're setting up your own expert so they can directly combat and take that question and show the jury, you know, why it's important and give a different answer. And when you have different answers and you're not sure, that's reasonable doubt.
Well, and Phil, the prosecution is going to have to do some rehabbing of this witness after that.
Yeah, and redirect.
That's next.
I would expect they're going to do some redirect next. Remember, this is just a half a day in court, so this should end around 1 o'clock. And the cross-examination is still going on. After this half a day, tomorrow, there is some expectation that the prosecution will rest its case, and the defense, as Tre points out, will start to put on their experts and all of the other people that they are going to bring up there to say that the investigation was flawed. Something happened in that house when John O'Keefe went into that house. That's how he died, not outside. And they have, you know, the prosecution put the medical examiner up. They have the medical examiner's testimony saying his cause of death was undetermined, or the manner of death was undetermined, I believe. Couldn't figure out, you know, obviously it was blunt force trauma, but we don't know what caused the blunt force trauma. That's what the medical examiner said in front of the jury.
Well, and Tre, looking ahead, whenever the defense actually presents their case, Phil was detailing last half hour that the witnesses were expecting to hear from some of the other officers that were in that house. What do you think, what does that telegraph in terms of their strategy?
Yeah, no, I think Phil's right on with this. So the strategy is going to be, they're going to call some of the LAPD people. They're going to exploit the mistakes they made. And then they're going to have some of their own witnesses who are going to jump on that and show why you can't trust those results, why you can't trust the collection, the sampling, the analysis, because all of that stuff supports what the experts are saying. So it's very important to attack the collection, because if you're waiting a year and a half to take witness testimony, if you're waiting a long time to submit samples to the lab, contamination can happen, unreliability can happen, and their experts are going to be all over it. So I would assume they're going to do more of the evidence collection through the LAPD people, tee it up for their own witnesses, and show you can't trust it.
Gotcha. All right, Phil and Tre, thank you both.